Bill Maher is wrong about a lot of stuff, but if he's wrong about one thing recently, one thing more than anything else is trans issues. And I want to talk about why. And first of all, you may be like, why Bill Maher? Who cares about this person? Well, first, Big Joel just did a video essay called Bill Maher, an Autopsy, where Joel, and this is a great video, go watch it, breaks down Bill Maher's like new rules segment, which is kind of like a little essay that Bill Maher makes about some issue of the day. And Big Joel goes through them and kind of breaks down why the points in them don't make any sense, and how like Bill Maher cherry picks data, and if you actually look at the sources, it doesn't mean anything. And he's really just creating this artificial kind of woke straw man that he can point at and say, that's the problem, woke, even though like it barely exists. And I, for so long, for longer than I can remember, have been watching the Bill Maher show. Back in the day, I think it was because I love panel shows, and the show is somewhat a panel show. And to be fair, he's got comedians on this show. Some of them are very funny comedians that I think have interesting things to say, and it is interesting to see argue with him. Jim Jeffries had a really funny bit where he called out Piers Morgan, and that's great. Ben Affleck yelled at Bill Maher about being Islamophobic. Also great. So like panel show, good. Comedian, I mean, I don't think he's the funniest guy now, but like he's a comedian. He's had years and years of practice. And like there aren't a lot of, especially before podcasts, like political talk shows like this. That's why I think the show used to be pretty interesting. And it was called Politically Incorrect before, and the government like came out and was like, Bill Maher, you're saying bad things and it's dangerous. He was saying things about like 9/11 and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I can't remember exactly what it was, but like the government called him out. So like that was cool, especially since the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, looking back, sucked so much. But like it was like he was on the right side of that one, and he was so on the right side that like the actual administration came out and yelled at him. But now he has morphed into old man yells at cloud meme, or am I out of touch? No, it's the kids that are wrong. Either pick your Simpsons meme or the I used to be with it, but then it changed what it was and now I wasn't with it anymore. It could happen to you. There's so many Simpsons clips that he has become. And he yells about woke stuff. The Big Joel video explains it all very well. But the Big Joel video is focused mostly on the new rules segment, which is like a 10-minute monologue that Bill does at the end of every show. It's kind of comedic, but it's also supposed to be like proving a point, usually some sort of hot political topic. But because Big Joel, I assume, does not watch all of the show, and why would you, except for if you're, a maniac like me, he wouldn't be familiar with some of the other weird things that Bill loves to talk about, and why, as someone who's been watching this show for a while, it has become incredibly frustrating, but also as it gets more frustrating, more interesting for me. I don't know. It's a weird relationship I have. There's a lot of funny people who are also kind of obsessed with Bill Maher as well. So like, I don't think I'm like fully alone on this. Tim Heidecker loves talking about Bill Maher and his stupid Club Random podcast that I don't even know if exists anymore. But like, there's people. I'm not the only one who finds this aging hipster comedian fascinating. But specifically, I want to talk about trans issues because that comes up so much on this damn show. He always manages to find a way in his new rule segment to work the thing back to kids with too many genders and LGBTQ, whatever, some very old joke. Even if the thing has nothing to do with that, Bill loves to come back to it. And I just want to talk about some of the things that Bill says, explain the arguments he makes and why I think they're bullshit. And then hopefully, Bill, you can watch this and like stop saying those things. And I'm saying stop saying those things because like they're wrong. It's wrong to say, but like they're wrong. Like it's weird that you keep saying them because like there's nothing to them, or it just seems like you're weirdly out of touch with this stuff. And I imagine Bill Maher, you're kind of in a bubble, right? Like you don't talk to a lot of people. You don't have trans people on your show. The last one I could find was from 2015, and it's crazy watching that interview now because Bill is so friendly to this trans person and so congratulatory. And this was right around the Caitlyn Jenner, like all the news about that. So it makes sense why this was kind of popular and cool to do, to be like, wow, trans people, you're really, really brave and it's great. And, I don't know exactly what's going on. It's not my business, but, you do you. And if that was the opinion Bill still had, I think that would be great, because I don't expect Bill Maher to understand everything about gender and like read books and stuff. Like, be nice. He's going to talk about it a lot, but I get it. He's a comedian and he tries to stay informed about other stuff, and he has his podcast. He smokes a lot of weed. Like, he's a busy man. But like, if he just had that opinion, fine. But I will say, if you're going to take one thing from this video, Bill, just have a trans person on the show. Just have 2 or 3. Have a whole trans episode where you have guests and then panel people that are all trans, and just ask them some of these questions. And then when you get some pushback, you can push back or not, and maybe we'll learn something, right? Because that's what the show's supposed to be, and that's what Bill likes to pretend it is this like Thunderdome of like arguments and ideas, and that would be great. And if that was the case, and you were going to talk about trans people once a week for no reason, just like say a bunch of stuff, it would make sense that you would have someone on that disagrees with you. And Bill has lots of people on that disagree with him about like Republican things. He'll have politicians on. He'll ask them like, did Trump concede the election? They'll be like, I don't know. It's complicated, to make them like look like hypocrites. So that's great. Or he'll try to reason with them even. And I think that's great. But he doesn't do that on the opposite side. Very rarely gets someone who's further to the left than him who can articulate their position well and like explain to Bill why they believe what they believe. Because it seems like, and Bill, you would hate this term, but I'm going to use it, you've created a safe space for yourself where you don't have to take this kind of criticism. But like, if you want to be brave and you want to be a brave free speech guy who's real cool, tells it like it is, just get some trans people on the show and just like ask them questions. And you can even bring up some of this dumb stuff that I'm going to talk about now, but like listen to what they say. And I will also say, Bill, this is something that I think is important. The things that Bill Maher says, sometimes he's trying to convince someone watching his show of them, right? A lot of the time, it's for people on the left who say, are at campus protests, protesting Israel's invasion of Palestine and like everything that's going on there. The new rule will be for them. It'll be like, kids, stop being so stupid about that and start being smart, whatever. There's other times, especially with this trans arguments, where like Bill's not trying to make the case for or against the actual rules. He's trying to make the case for the politics of the rules, and I'll explain more as we go. But like, Bill, if the thing is politically complicated, just explain it. That's easy. That's the whole point of the show. You are not just an observer here. You have a platform, so feel free to use it. But okay, let's talk about the thing he talks about so much. The thing that made me want to make this video, because it bugs me. He brings it up pretty much anytime someone talks about trans stuff. And I don't even know if this law or rule or whatever is real, how widespread it is, if it's something that's being voted on. But I'm going to take it at face value the way he explains it, because the way he explains it, I don't think he's right about it. But the idea is that there's a rule, I believe it's in California, that a teacher cannot tell a parent if a child in the class identifies as trans, or if I have some gender identity outside of what the parents believe or something like that. And if you're like, wait, I understand why that law says, you're way ahead of me. A lot of the times Bill will say, well, it doesn't matter. Like, you just can't have a law that puts parents against teachers. And I agree that a law that does that could be unpopular, but one thing that could make it more popular, if it was necessary, is explaining why. And I think even if you just heard it the time I explained it, there's a good chance you can see why maybe this law would be necessary or why this would exist. Because I bet you guys can come up with the one use case for this law where it would like be helpful, which is you have a kid who's trans. And by a kid who's trans, that does not mean someone that is on hormone replacement therapy or puberty blockers or has had surgeries or anything. It just means a kid who's asking their friends to call them they, them, or use other pronouns, and maybe like wearing their hair different and stuff, presenting as a gender that is not the one that you would expect based on, the birth certificate, whatever. And also, if I use some of the wrong terms here, I'm sorry, but I think you guys probably know what I mean. But okay, so that kid is doing that thing, right? They're doing that in school. Maybe they don't even tell the teacher. Maybe they just tell their friends, but like the teacher hears them, and they do it at school because they can't do it at home, because their parents have really backwards beliefs about gender. And I think this parent that I'm describing here is a very extreme case, right? Like, not only you would expect that every parent who doesn't fully agree with like the current very far left consensus about trans people, like I don't expect all of them to behave that way, but like some will. If like that happened and then they called the teacher and said, hey teacher, we're thinking our kid might be trans, we're not sure, but we think some stuff's up, some funny business. The teacher can say a couple of things, right? They probably can't lie even though in this case they should, right? They could say, oh, I don't think I have anything to worry about, be nice to little Timmy or whatever. That's an option, I guess, but like they're probably not allowed to do that. They could tell the parents, right? But then the kid may be in harm's way. And even if they want to like, intervene and try to help the kid, like still like damage may happen to this kid. But then there's the third option where they go, there's a law, I can't talk about it, talk to your kid. That makes sense. Makes total sense. It's good for the teacher because the teacher doesn't have to, blow up this kid's spot, especially if the kid is in school, like, very openly talking about like, call me this and use this pronoun or whatever, and they're talking to the teachers this way. Like, you may go like, why? Well, of course the kid would expect the parents are going to find out. And maybe they do. But also, maybe this is something that, like, the kid doesn't tell that many people, but the teacher just sees. And maybe kids are dumb when it comes to, like, keeping secrets from parents. And we shouldn't expect that kids are going to be spies and have to keep this secret. Like, this is the Murder on the Orient Express or something. Like, this is just, a part of the kid's life. And, of course, they're going to want to go to school and maybe express themselves. So that feels normal. But Bill... then, also for the parent's good, the parent doesn't have to worry about the teacher's lying to him or not. Because the teacher's not lying. Because that's the worst option, right? Because the parents think the teachers might be lying to them if they say anything at all. And also, what Bill will say in this situation is like, you can't do that. And also, like, say there's a lot of science that this is a phase. And that kids are getting indoctrinated by their teachers, and more people are trans than were before, and if they continue on that path, everybody's gonna be trans. He'll say stuff like that, which is obviously it's dumb. Left-handed people, and like anything like that, where like you start letting people do something and then people do start doing it more, but usually levels off at some point. But like Bill treats it like the kid who's going around in school being trans, what they're doing is taking puberty blockers that they got on the street and going into back alleys and getting surgeries that their parents would not find out about otherwise. They're doing this all on one day, and they're going to come home and the parents can see them go, oh my God, look at, you did surgery without telling me. If only the teacher had told me, I could have done something. Like, as if this is something that you could do. You have to have a doctor like prescribe you puberty blockers and stuff like that. You obviously, if you're going to get a surgery, which like no kids do, with barely any kids as far as I could tell do, and very few of them get puberty blockers or hormone replacement. It's mostly just kids going like, this is my pronoun for this amount of time, and I'm going to present differently, which is totally normal. And which is something that you could just change. If it is a phase, let them go through phases. Kids go through phases, but you don't go like, you're not going to like emo music for the rest of your life, kids, so you can't listen to any of it now. You just assume either it's a phase or it's their new favorite thing and they're going to be really into it. So this idea that like we have to make sure the kids aren't trans at school, the parents need to know being trans is not a big deal. Like it's a big deal. It's important for people, should be able to express themselves. But like the idea that kids are doing this behind their parents' back and doing any sort of irreparable harm to themselves as opposed to just living slightly differently, it is bonkers that Bill presents it this way. I mean, you don't present it this way. You present like, oh yeah, kids wearing a dress now or something. They're saying their she is their pronouns. It's like, you do stuff like that in high school and then you don't do it, or you do. But like, you don't have to wear that dress for the rest of your life because you put it on once. So like, if Bill thinks that this is a phase, that people are going through a phase because most kids aren't as trans as they think, it's very trendy. He even says this in one of his new rules. He's like, why is it that if you go to an LA party, so many parents will say their kids are on the spectrum, but if you go to like Ohio, they don't do that. Either it's extra trendy in California or it's extra oppressive in Ohio. And he doesn't say that like it's the LA one and not the Ohio one. Like, he doesn't say that next, but like that's the point he's trying to make, is that like, see, everybody in LA is just doing it for fun, because otherwise they'd be doing it in Ohio too, except for maybe it is more prejudice there, and that's why it's difficult. But anyway, Bill talks about this law so much, and at least for me, and I'm sure I'll get lots of comments, if you explain it just a little bit, it makes sense. And Bill, if you want to say, well, kids are doing surgeries on themselves, like, they're not, but let's say they were, and they were getting back alley drugs for hormone replacement, stuff like that. If they were doing that without their parents' permission, that's not good. Like, you're not supposed to do that. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about kids presenting differently and using pronouns and stuff. But the thing that some parents who were shitty would still take so seriously and be so mean to these poor little kids. And if you don't believe, just like think about it. And it's not the exact same thing, but like think about it in terms of gay acceptance, the same kind of thing. Like you wouldn't want a teacher. You wouldn't want it to be a rule that if your parent calls the school and they're like, hey, is my kid gay? You got to say, yes, he is. No, you would say like, that's not my job to tell you that. And then that would be all you would say. But also like anybody can imagine now, like a kid who goes home and the parent finds out that they're gay and they like abuse them. Like that happens. So this is happening with all kinds of things. Anyway, the point is the thing that Bill Maher is talking about is a cool law that is good. It sucks that it has to exist, but it's fine. And B, not really a big deal. Like, what I think is the problem is Bill sees trans adults and sees people like Caitlyn Jenner who get lots of surgeries and stuff and have a magazine cover where they say, call me Caitlyn, right? And like assumes that that's kind of what everybody does, or like that's everybody's end game when it comes to this stuff. And like, I'll tell you right now, I'm a cis guy, like I'm male, always been. I have no skin in the game here and no experience with, but I've listened to people, which is all you usually have to do. And there's a difference in what transness means to different people and how you do that sort of thing, Bill. But like Bill seems to think it's the most extreme example every time. But then even if we get past that one, which is his new favorite, and like I do think John Lovett on the Pod Save America team, he interviewed Bill Maher, not on Bill Maher's show though, and like asked him about this, and Bill really didn't have anything to say. And I think John made a pretty good point. Bill's still talking about it as if he'd never heard any of those things John said. But like, whatever, because we move past that point, we get to athletes. And like John Oliver did a great piece about trans athletes and why it's not a big deal. And people want it to be a big deal, but like it's not. And by people want it to be a big deal, I guess I mean there's people that, and here's just my read on it, find trans people weird, and the idea of being trans weird because it's, you know, it's different than the way you were raised. You never heard of that before, and then you get raised and then you find out about it, you're like, that's weird. That's how people work. Like usually you go like, but why is it? And then you learn, and then you go, well, that's not weird at all. But like as a knee-jerk reaction, sure, but they think like these trans people are weird. And they also think that like sports are important and my kids' sports are important. Again, Bill has no kids, he has no skin in the game, but still, he has a lot of opinions about this. But like the idea that trans athletes are something that Bill Maher should give more than 5 seconds of airtime to on his show. Bill doesn't talk about other athletes. It's not a sports show. He doesn't care. He's not watching. He's not interviewing, you know, child athletes, because why would he? Because who cares? But because it seems like people on the right were able to find like one specific situation where like sports at a young age, kid wants to win a sport, so he very cleverly pretend to be the other gender to get an advantage, you know, and then that's unfair to everybody else. And listen, here's my first take on it. If that's the worst thing trans people are doing, that's pretty okay compared to like what other things are happening in this world. That would suck if that ever happened. It doesn't happen the way that I'm describing it, but like even if it did, it's not great. But it's not a big deal compared to like other shit that's going on. It'd be weird if someone brought it up that much and didn't have kids or like firsthand experience with this. But the reason that this bugs me so much is because, as John Oliver said, there are some specific cases where there is a biological advantage to, you know, being male, and, you know, certain sports, it's just like you've got a huge advantage that makes it unfair. It's not every sport, and you know that because like trans people don't win every sport. There are trans athletes now, and like a lot of the time they're just there. They just show up and compete and don't win because they don't have some sort of incredible advantage because they're not a X-Man, and it's like they're just another person. And I'll tell you, like when I was a boy, when I was young, I was not the best baseball player of the boys, but if you threw me in with the girls, I would still not be the best. Everybody isn't the same. There's that swimmer, Riley Gaines, who, and this is why I think these are so dumb. This is such a dumb thing to care about, is because this was the person that went to the State of the Union address, right? Like Donald Trump talked about them and like pointed at them, or like they're important, right? Which would like lead someone like me to assume, wow, this must be a slam dunk. Like this case must be like there were two of us, and I was the non-trans person, the other person was a trans person, and they destroyed me, and I should have won, but I didn't, and look at how broken and all my bones are. Like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. When you look up what happened to this person, she, first of all, tied with the trans person. So if trans people have some sort of incredible advantage, was it enough to overcome whatever else was happening here? So they tied, first of all, and that's what they were upset. And she's mostly upset because the trans person got the medal, it seems like, or got to like take a picture or something, and Riley didn't. And it seems like that really like bugged her. But also, so you think, okay, well, all right, so at least in this situation, a trans person was the fastest, right? She was the fastest. Trans person was the fastest too. So they tied, and that was, as swimming, you know, that's pretty important. But that's not what it was. There were 5 other people that beat all of them. I believe 5 or 4. Either they came in 5th or 6th. But either way, there are some people there that were cis women that also beat you, and this trans person who you have so many problems with. So, like, why can't the trans person do it? They're not going to automatically win. And if that's not the problem, because if you're saying they're automatically going to win all the sports, they'll make it pointless. Maybe there's an argument towards, like, not having that person in the thing. I would say there's an argument towards that in general. Like, if, like, Michael Phelps was in my high school, I'd be like, can he not swim with the rest of us? Because he's way too good at swimming. But whatever. But if that's not the argument, right? Some people will say, well, I don't want my little girl to be run over on the soccer field by some big man who's, you know, gender confused. But if you believe that, if you genuinely believe that, do you have the same problem with a cis girl who is potentially the same size as a trans girl, getting your daughter, like knocking your daughter's teeth out during a soccer game? Or is that cool? It's just the part where it's like, she's not even supposed to be here. She could be here and do whatever she wants. Like, if that's a problem, it seems like what this person is describing is like maybe contact sports in high school shouldn't be as dangerous, which I also agree with, right? Like, people die playing football every year. We shouldn't do that. Like, kids shouldn't. And if they're playing soccer so hard that they're getting so injured in the soccer that this is like a problem, then they should be less aggressive in soccer. I don't know. Start calling more fouls or whatever soccer does. I don't watch soccer. But there's this idea that trans kids are going to ruin sports. But first of all, Bill, in the world that we have created, the one we're talking about right now, the idea that a kid would be like, I want to win an award. I want to win, you know, a swimming award or something. I want to get 5th place in a swimming competition, whatever. There's 2 options here. One, I can train really, really hard and get better, and then maybe I'll win. Or option 2, the preferable option, I totally change my gender to everybody I know, my friends, my family. They'd of course have to find this out because they're going to go to my swimming meets. Everybody yells at me, including this old comedian on TV, and it makes my life awful. But then I do get to win a swimming ribbon that everyone constantly yells at me about, and the president makes fun of me for. Like, the idea that a kid would do that, insane. So that doesn't exist. There's no kid doing that. If it's because the kids are going to be too dangerous, they're going to beat up the other kids playing soccer, that's not a problem. That's not a trans problem. That's a soccer problem. That's a contact sport problem. We should do something about that. But like, if that swimming isn't a contact sport, so if the problem is it's unfair, if this was a world where every single sport in every single women's like sport in high school was being won by a trans woman or girl or whatever, then maybe you'd have a case. But it just isn't. And also, there's not that many trans athletes. There's like, I don't know, less of them than there are Pokemon. And I've been out of the loop. There's thousands at least of Pokemon. But like, there's not that many trans athletes. And there's so much bullshit that we put them through. If they just want to play baseball or something. And whenever this happens, like when it happens in real life with baseball players, like that John Oliver bitch shows this, people are like, I want to play baseball. And all the other kids are like, let's let them play baseball. And then they do, and they have a good time, or they stink usually, because most kids stink at sports. But like, it is not usually this big culture issue that people like Bill Maher make it, because of course it's not, because there's just not this many cases, right? Like, it'd be like, let's say someone in a cross country match or something, like in like distance running, just started using rollerblades, right? Let's be insanely generous. Say 100 kids in cross-country running all decided that they were allowed to do this. Like, maybe like they had religious reasons why they had, so the school had to let them use the rollerblades, and they won all the matches. Like, they won all the cross-country matches. At least most of them, the one that Riley was running, they got 5th place, but still they tied in this cross country. But even if that was happening and it was so clearly an advantage and it was so clearly bullshit that was being made up to win the things, it still wouldn't be worth talking about. Instead, like, I don't know, ICE or Palestine or Russia or so many other things, AI, like, and that blows my mind. So that's the second thing that Bill does that pisses me off. And I think if he had one trans person on the show, they would just say that, and they would go, yeah, no, it's not. That's all they would have to say. But because Bill refuses, because of safe space, it's never gonna happen. All right, but okay, so those are the two examples he throws out all the time. There's other issues and things that Bill talks about, but those two come up the most. This one law with the parents, and then kids in sports. But I just want to say one other thing, because Bill will very frequently throw out a survey or something, or some sort of study, and he'll say, like, this is a study that disproves it. This is a study. He did this with John Lovett. He was like, but what about this study? It's not as clear cut. It's not as guaranteed to be one way or the other. So, maybe we shouldn't do it at all. Maybe no one should be allowed to be trans, or maybe we should take a little bit more time to think about this. If that was the case, Bill, and specifically talking about kids, if there were so many of these studies that said letting your kid identify as a different gender is a bad idea, letting them use things like puberty blockers that are reversible because they're puberty blockers and not puberty destroyers, whatever. If that research existed, it would exist. Like, it would be out there and people would share it. They would exist and there would be lots of them. Because yeah, climate change is real. You can find, if you really look for it, a paper by a scientist that says climate change isn't real. Like, and if you wave that and you were like, see, it's not real, the science isn't out yet, it'd be silly to do that, right? But with this stuff, it's not. And the thing that always comes to mind with these studies, with Bill Maher specifically, is like, Bill, you love talking about this stuff so much. You cannot find specific examples of things that you don't like. Like, I was watching, I wasn't watching Fox News, but I saw somebody posted a clip of Fox News complaining about a trans athlete at a disc golf, like frisbee golf tournament, as if anybody gives a shit. But like, that's so interesting that it merits being on the news. If a sinkhole opened up and swallowed an entire frisbee golf tournament, we still wouldn't hear about it on the news because it's frisbee golf. But for Fox News, it's just so important. So like, if that's the best example you guys could come up with, clearly this isn't that big of a deal. Clearly you guys are making it a huge deal. And Bill, in a new rules, you could just say, like, your new rule could say, like, listen, maybe I don't understand everything about trans people. Maybe there's some strange cases, but like, we're making too big of a deal about it. It's not as big of a deal as we're making it. It's maybe trying to distract from the fact that some states are trying to get gender affirming care out of Medicaid and Medicare, probably too. I don't remember which one of them. And not just for kids, for everybody, for adults, which apparently, people like Bill Maher have no problem with. But like, it kind of seems like they're using the frisbee golfers to make it this big deal. It's like, oh, trans issue is so complicated. I guess we got to take it off of nobody gets to have any. And that seems like a bizarre conclusion considering how much this doesn't happen in real life. But the only other thing I want to throw out to Bill Maher is the idea of the cat, the litter box kids. There was this idea that was spreading around, probably on Facebook, because this is prime Facebook material, that there were kids in schools who were identifying as cats or something, and because of that, teachers had to put litter boxes in the classrooms. And people said this. I heard this from people in real life. They said this is what's happening. Now, I'm not positive what the actual story was. I think I've gotten it down to two things. One is like an adult furry convention might have requested this at like a hotel once or something, which is, something you do, but that's like what adults do. So I don't know, doesn't really have anything to do with what kids do. And also furries, and it's not the same thing. Also, like, there's no kids that are identifying as cats at school. That also doesn't happen. But the litter box example is like extra interesting. The other option, what might have been what was happening, was like, it may have been a teacher wanted it for like school shootings or something. And I don't know exactly why. Maybe you want like to have a way to hide I don't know. But let's say one of those two was true. If it was the original thing, if kids were identifying as cats, and you were telling me this story, like, you're like, this is happening. This happened in a school, and the kids identifying as cats and put a litter box in the school, show it to me. Because kids take pictures of stuff all the time. They have their phones all the time. You can't even take them away. Otherwise, they like yell at you. So if there was a kid in my high school when I was growing up, or grade school, or whatever, I mean high school because that's when we had phones, but that's because I was on the cusp of phones. But like, if there was a kid doing that, there'd be so many pictures and videos. Everybody would see it, and you would be able to show me that video, and I go, well, I guess that's happening. But like, there's no videos of it, of this cat child doing litter in the class, because it's not real. And that's, I think, the problem with a lot of these trans issues that Bill Maher likes to talk about. There are all these hypotheticals, these stories that he's heard, and this thing that maybe is happening, and these athletes that are maybe winning this. But it's like, okay, well, which ones? You tell me, you give me the list of the people you want banned from doing sports. I'll look at them. It's not my job, but it's not your job either. It's not the president's job. It's like somebody in the NCAA's job. But like, you look at them and you say, okay, this one you shouldn't be able to play because of this, and this one, you know. And then we'd have a list and then we'd be done. But they want it to seem like it's like every school's got a trans kid that wants to play a sport and wants to have a whole bunch of bullshit. And specifically, like, it's happening in like all the liberal places like Los Angeles, but also it's happening everywhere. And it's getting starting these big culture fights. Like, I don't think there's a kid in Alabama or something who's like, you know what? Everybody in my town voted for Donald Trump. There's no way they'll ever be cool with this. But I think I'm going to ask if I can be trans and then be on the other baseball team. That kid doesn't exist. None of these people exist. And you know what? They should be more cool with trans people in that city in Alabama. But like, that's the thing with this. Like, it's all distractions to demonize a group of people, make a group of people seem weird, that it's different than maybe what you and me, Bill, you know, how we grew up. But it's not weird. It's just different, and it's fine. And they're cool. Like not like every person, because some people aren't cool. But Bill, they're just, trans people are normal people, and they just want to be respected. And some of them probably want to go on your show. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know why, because they want to explain this to you and talk to people, because you have an audience. And if you, Bill, believe that your show matters, and you have an audience that listens to you, and it seems like you do, and it definitely seems like you believe you do, then it is your responsibility to have these people on that don't agree with you, and listen to them, and make arguments, and convince people of things, and look at some of these examples and go like, maybe this is bullshit, and maybe that should be my new rule. It shouldn't be that like the wokes are destroying the everything, and that's why everybody hates America. It should be like, hey, maybe back off the sports thing, all right? And that would be cool, Bill. So maybe do that, because, you know, this you think about this so much, and I watch your show all the time. I've seen almost every episode. I'll say a nice thing. New rule last week about AI being too nice to you. Good, funny. Overall, I thought that was like one of your best ones in a while. And it was self-deprecating, and it made, you know, some good points. So, you know, it can work. You know what else I love, Bill? I love listening to you talk to comedians about comedy. I don't like agree with you about everything when you complain about how things are too woke now, but just when you talk about the craft, when you talk about it with like another stand-up comedian, it's nice to hear you just talk about that, because it's something you've done a long time and you'd love it. So this could be fixed. This is all just a thought that I've had. I do want to say, on this channel, and maybe also my other channel, Nando V Movies, you're going to be doing a live stream for charity. If you care about trans people and you love watching people watch bad movies they don't like, which is what we're going to be doing, you should come support this charity. It is Thursday, August 14th. We're raising money for the Transgender Law Center. Me and my co-hosts on my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking, DJ and Diggins, we're each picking a 90-minute movie, not telling the other one what it is, and we're all going to watch them one after the other, not all at the same time. Then we're going to tell you guys what they are, and they're going to be pretty easy to get. I think a couple of them are already on Tubi or whatever, and you're just going to watch with us. We're going to have fun, and we're going to raise money for a charity that is cool. Clearly, that is something that is important, because it keeps coming up, you know, whether people like it or not. So I will put the information for that charity here. And I'm not going to do a full like pitch here, but if you are interested in figuring out what Nebula is, go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, and you can subscribe to my Nebula and watch these videos early. So that's all I got, everybody. Stay safe out there. Bill, you know, you're on notice. It's a new rule, and you gotta, you know, I don't know, do a good job. Have fun, everybody. Bye.